top question on everyone's mind is, what is the best way to load large amounts of data with infinite scrolling? Would you recommend NG infinite scroll, or is there some other way of doing it?
Brandon Tilley is an excellent, excellent engineer. And he wrote NG Infinite Scroll. They're using it in production. With my work with GitHuman, that was kind of the same thing as, hey, we're going to potentially have a very large data set. And so I went to him and I said, what's up? Like, you wrote this thing. And he's like, yeah, like, we use it in production. It's totally fine. And as far as I know, that's really the only good way to handle large data sets is, through pagination, is that you take a large data set. And so this is kind of a performance strategy, kind of a, I don't want to say, just a little side path that we're going to take real quick, is when you have, this is something I had to do in Flex a lot, is you would get a large data set, and especially if you were binding to kind of complex objects, is you would just simply say, I can't handle all of this. Like, first of all is, maybe you have a data collection and you're putting 200 things on the page. Well, from an architectural standpoint, that may not, or even a user experience standpoint, that may not make sense. And just say, I only want to put 10 of these items on here. So what you do is you create basically a separate, smaller array, and then you just slice the pieces that you need as you need them. And so that is kind of the technique that's happening under the hood. Is in NG Infinite Scroll, you're calling load more on an event. So it's saying like, hey, I'm at like the end of what I have displayed, give me some more. And so you can either do that locally by basically saying, give me the next 10 results out of this large data set, or go to the server and get me more, and then return it via a promise and resolve it. Does that make sense? Is pretty simply, like with large data, is you sometimes have to chop it up into smaller pieces and work with just that. Also, with that, is be careful to, or understand that if you have a large complex object that you're binding to and you have a lot of them, is you're going to run into problems. And so try to bind to the simplest possible version of the object that you need. Because when you go through that digest cycle, it does do a deep copy or a deep comparison. And so if you have a large complex data object and you're doing a lot of them, you're going to run into problems. I mean, it's just the nature of the beast. With that said, is try to simplify your objects. And so even then, we were talking about modifying your data, is you may actually want to preemptively, and I've done this, is simplify your object within the service. And so let's say you have a books collection with these really complex books objects, is you might create a simplified books collection to display just the stuff that you need. So maybe it's title and author, but maybe you have all this other stuff like ISBN and the year it was released and the whatever, 50 comments and reviews and all this stuff. Well, you don't need all that for what you're displaying. So don't bind to the whole thing. Is just loop through and create, especially if you're reading, then it's really easy, is then just loop through and create a simplified version of that and then bind to that. Does that make sense? So it's really kind of making your object as shallow as possible.